for joining our mom chat today. I'm Jackie Bruno with NBC 10 Boston, and you are watching our mom chat on our Facebook Live page. I want to bring in our guests, though. We have Kevin March. He is an educational consultant and really an expert in all things through K through 12 education. He's going to tell us what we can do in this new normal to try and figure out homeschooling and all our other questions. And I want to bring in Latoyia Edwards from NBC 10 Boston as well. Hello, Latoyia, my fellow mom colleague here. We're going to be bringing Christa in just a few moments as well. She'll be here, Christa Delcamp. She's getting everything finished from the morning right now. But Latoyia, I want to talk a little about, before we talk with questions for Kevin, what are you dealing with right now as a mom in this new normal, trying to homeschool, manage emotions?
I think I'm doing pretty well. I'm reporting here from my living room right now, and my kids are in the rest of the house, and my husband's been wonderful working from home and trying to manage it all. I have a 13-year-old who is in 8th grade, about to go to high school. And so, 8th grade year is sort of like your senior year in middle school. And so she gets to miss out. She's missing out on those activities, and she's not so happy about that. And then I have a preschooler. I have a 3-year-old who's a genius. And I heard you talking, Kevin, about how you didn't like, you didn't connect with geometry. Well, my little boy actually is obsessed with geometry.
Oh, wow.
15
That's
months.
good.
So it's hard he was going to daycare where he was engaged. He had already started reading at 3 and doing geometry. And so, it's serving both of them, because they're both, when I walk in right now, my little boy is writing out his shapes and alphabet for me. And
Wow.
on her Chrome, on her laptop, doing her assignments, her remote learning from school. So I'm in a world where both things are happening, and I just want to make sure that my daughter stays on track. She was an honor student when this whole thing started, and it's to keep them engaged, Jackie, and Kevin.
Totally. Trying to keep them engaged
right now.
Yeah, I'm dealing with that too. Many of you know that I have a son who's 5. He has autism. And so we're dealing not just with homeschooling, but trying to get therapies via Zoom. And so we're really focusing on speech and speech therapy, because that's his main issue. And it's hard to keep him engaged, especially when he's on his home rules, which I'm finding are very different than his school rules.
Yeah.
He has so much respect for his teacher at school. Mrs. Bacon is amazing, and she's doing such a great job of keeping him engaged. But trying to do his therapies online, he doesn't have the same desire to stay engaged on those. So I'm struggling with that. And I have a 2-year-old who he is a brute and just wants to be physical all day. And so trying to make sure he's not, killing himself while we're trying to help Jack with homeschooling. My husband's working from home, so he's trying to get work done, and it's not easy. And here I am at work. So I'm trying to be the, don't forget about 2:30 speech. Don't forget about this, which is a lot of mental load on us moms, which feels like we're always in charge of the schedules, right?
Right.
And Kevin, so we're bringing you in, and tell us a little about, like Latoyia was saying earlier, she's, selfishly kind of coming into this because she has a lot of questions for you. Latoyia, what was your first concern that you wanted to bring to Kevin?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No. What were you? I'm sorry, I missed that last piece, Jack. Did you ask me a question? You wanted him to sort of?
Well, what's your main concern right now? What's the first question that comes to your mind, Latoyia?
Well, I think I speak for a lot of mothers in the sense where we're not educators. We leave the professionals that work to the professionals, and so for me, it's really keeping that momentum going, because you don't want your child to go through the summer slump in May. Kevin, I know about where kids, when they go to the summer months, they sort of lose a little bit, miss a step anyway, unless they're not getting tutoring. And so to start this in March and to keep that engagement, help me out, please.
Absolutely. So I think one of the best things to do is, first of all, to set reasonable expectations. You're not going to be having those 6 or 8 hour school days like you would when you sent your kid to school. That's unrealistic. So what I like to do is have really short but concentrated blocks of time that I say, okay, this is going to be school. We're going to do this for an hour or an hour and a half. We're going to take a break and then come back to it, and set maybe 2 or 3 blocks of time like that every day. And that way you're staying on top of your work, and you can continue it even into the summer, especially on the weekdays. Maybe you can take a weekend off, or if you end up going on a trip or something like that, that's one thing. But keeping that kind of being consistent means that you don't have to spend like hours and hours every day doing schoolwork.
That's
Great
good.
point.
I'm happy that you said that because, I don't want to be the drill sergeant, but I come home and I'm like, hey, is this done? And she even says herself, she's like, I needed to take a break. And I had to give her that for a moment. But I'm like, in school, you don't get that break, but maybe she does get recess. She does get, certain periods. I have to sort of remember to break it up a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think breaking it up and also taking set off days, like, you have weekends when you're in school, so why not have weekends when you're out of school? Just because you've been home the other days doesn't mean that, you haven't been working, you haven't been using your brain. So you really need to build in it'll feel a little bit artificial, but you need to build in time off for yourself, or for your kids to really reset and kind of continue learning and staying engaged.
Great point. We also want to make sure that anybody's watching, if you have a question that you want to ask our expert, make sure you're putting those into our comments. Send us those questions. Great opportunity to get them answered by an expert in the field. Kevin, I'm wondering personally, when it comes to IEPs, my son has one at school. I'm worried that, it's not being totally fulfilled. And while there are some things that I'm seeing him make progress on, even at home, I don't want to neglect that. And I'm also now looking at summer school that he was promised, and I don't know what that's going to look like. What's your prediction on summer school? What's your advice for parents who are dealing with an IEP situation?
Absolutely. So with the IEPs, I would really provide that feedback to the people who are administering them and like the support specialists, because they need to be constantly improving what their offerings are. There was obviously a big shift online, so that's challenging for them, but they need to really just make sure that they're offering as full of a program as they can. And I think that I'd recommend just being really proactive and staying in contact with them to provide that feedback. An IEP is an independent educational plan, for those who don't know.
Right.
So it's often for students with disabilities or other special learning needs. And in terms of the summer school, I think a lot of programs are going to be canceled, or at least some will be, but a lot will also be online. And that's another great way of keeping your kids engaged over the summer, is enrolling them in a summer program that is online. And that way it might be a little bit more relaxed. There will be some that are academic, but there will also be a lot where you can kind of chat with friends on Zoom and maybe make friends online. And that'll be more fun than maybe the sitting in a lecture type classroom, especially for high school students. It's not going to be an AP class or something like that. So building those connections and maybe pitching it to your student that way would be a pretty good strategy.
And Latoyia, I know your daughter is an all-star athlete. So we're also, Kevin helps kids get into great colleges. So right. What about people who, really were building up that college resume in high school and now everything's been put on hold? Will colleges be understanding of that, or should we be encouraging our students to maybe think of new ways to stand out?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the overarching theme, or one of the major themes with this whole crisis, is that it's affecting everybody. So colleges won't say, hey, why did your daughter not go to basketball camp or something like that? Because they know that that's impossible in almost every case. But what I would say is you want to show that you're being proactive during the crisis, and show them that that can be through the summer camps and doing those online. That can be kind of starting creative projects. There's so many web-based things that you can do, and things you can do from home. So thinking about maybe, hey, starting a blog, building a website, those are really good ideas, because they don't require you to go to a physical building. And there's so many resources online for coding or whatever you need for that.
Really fascinating.
Yeah, that's great. What's my daughter, she last night we broke up her learning, and so she's doing homework past the school time frame, and I said, get back on that math. She's in an advanced math class, and she's doing something. I said, what are you doing? She's like, I don't know. I don't have any answers. So she was past the time where she could connect with the teacher in theory on Zoom, and talk about this. And so it's like, what do you do? I mean, this math that she's doing, I can't tell you the last time I looked at something like that. It doesn't look like anything I've ever seen before in 8th grade, you know? So
Sure.
what are you doing this in this remote learning time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the first thing I would say is stay in touch with your teachers, because a lot of them, even if they're not in the lecture, if you email them or reach out, they should, I think in a lot of cases, you could say, hey, I'm really struggling with this. Can we have a 30-minute conversation? The other thing that's great is that there's so many resources online. Even on YouTube, there's some really good channels that you can look at that like teach math and really lay out every concept. There's what's called Khan Academy that has a ton of really good resources and videos and tutorials, as well as practice problems. So I would look at the things that have been established in terms of like being online for a long time, like those resources, because they're going to be more adapted to your student. Like they're going to be better at teaching online, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Latoyia, he said I could even learn how to do fractions again, because, you know, that's not something that I'm excelling at. I was thinking about all the things I still don't understand. Maybe I just need to go on YouTube and I can even homeschool myself during this crisis.
Well, whatever works. We do have some viewer comments. I know Madeline Flores from Lowell, Massachusetts said that she's here. So we just want to say a big hello.
Hi, Madeline.
Hey, and we want to get the question. So if you're sitting at home watching right now, I just shared this for a watch party. Hey, Christa.
Hey, how are
Hi.
you? Nice to meet you, Kevin. And I'm sorry I'm late to the party. I
Not a
mean,
problem.
it's indicative of what's going on at my home. No surprise, given the technical problems we had here, that remote learning's not going so great at our house. But I did want to say, I heard you mention Khan Academy. That is a phenomenal resource. We've used it in our own home, and they have a younger version, Khan Academy Kids for
yeah.
Oh, you guys too, you've used it as well. I have to say, it's mom approved, at least by this mom here.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah. So forgive me if you already went over this, but I have to say that one thing that I've been kind of struggling with in our household is knowing going into next year that they have flipped the page now, and really we're not reviewing material anymore. We are learning new material, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so going into this next year, what are teachers going to have, you know, available to students who, you know, might not have been able to cover things as adequately in some homes versus others? I mean, they've got to have some kind of equalizing factor, right? These teachers going into a new grade, knowing some kids may have gotten fractions and others might not have. How are they going to do that?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. I don't know for sure, but I would speculate that teachers are going to build in more time for review, because they know that, you know, even in normal circumstances, it's a kind of an uneven learning, you know, people learn at different paces. And this is going to complicate that and magnify that by like tenfold.
Right.
So I would say that it's not going to be full steam ahead, especially if it's online again. It's not going to be full steam ahead in that same way. And they're going to be more understanding if, for example, like your students struggling with something because they haven't been able to talk directly to a teacher or meet with them in person. That said, I would say that even preparing over the summer, especially doing an hour or two a day, maybe on weekdays, and building in time off, like if you're if you know, we can take vacations. If you end up taking a vacation or something like that, obviously take that time off. But just kind of working towards preparing yourself or your kids for the fall, especially if you know what classes they're going to take, is a really good thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, you feel for these kids who are going through these transition periods too. I have a son he's in 5th grade now. He's going to be launching into middle school, a whole nother transition. You think about these graduating seniors who don't have those, well, they have a milestone, but they're not able to really celebrate it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
These are kind of, you know, markers that kids kind of go through. And usually we as parents and educators, we're all working together to kind of help make that transition process a little bit easier. That's kind of been taken away. Any advice for parents out there? And forgive me, did y'all go over this already?
No.
We take all the advice we can get. Bring it on.
Yeah, for the transitions, I would go back to the theme that this is really affecting everybody. And so it's really unfortunate, especially with the graduations, that people can't celebrate the way that they should or the way that they deserve to. But in terms of transitioning into a new, you know, to middle school or high school, for example, or even college, what I would say is a lot of people are going to be in the same boat. So feeling lost will be pretty normal, or not lost, but having a harder time than normal transitioning is going to be a pretty normal thing, and it's going to be what a lot of people ultimately experience. So teachers, just reach out to them, be proactive, tell them that, if you email them, say like your kid's having a hard time transitioning, or, how can we accommodate them? What can we do? So just being proactive in that sense, and understanding that like your kid probably won't be expected to just make this seamless transition into the next level.
Yeah.
You know what I'm trying to do too, and as a working mom, it's so hard to get to all these lessons that I'm getting emailed out by my teachers for my son, and I'm putting them in a special email folder, and I'm realizing that whether I get to them this week or over the summer, as long as I get to them, that's like the key, right? So like, we didn't go over Lively Letter L this week because mommy was busy with work, but we can get to Lively Letter L maybe on the weekend, or maybe even in a month. I go back to that email thing. We try to hit them in order throughout the summer again, where maybe things got a little too crazy, and maybe giving ourselves that grace that we do have the summer to continue with the education, and we're not on a time frame as much as we always think that we are, right? Can we give ourselves that grace?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if you have younger kids, that's a great point. You can recycle lessons and just go over them again, because it takes time for stuff to stick, and especially if you're not doing it in a classroom setting, it's going to even take more time. So, I mean, think about all this time. Like for me, I've watched YouTube videos again because I don't understand things if I'm trying to learn a concept for school. So definitely just use the material and make sure, right, so the timeline's been kind of pushed back until the fall for classes. So definitely be prepared as much as you can for the fall, but it doesn't have to be like June, whatever date your school ends.
Right.
And Jennifer T. Cole wrote a comment, and she says, at our school, they will assess the kids immediately in the fall to see where any gaps are. So you got to think a lot of schools are going to be doing that. And I'm so thankful that they are, because we don't want anyone to fall behind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think teachers, especially as professional educators, know that, in the best of circumstances, there are going to be gaps between students. So those are only going to be magnified as, with this whole crisis and learning online. So I would expect, or I would at least speculate, that a lot of schools are going to kind of do that initial assessment coming in to see where students are.
And Kevin, you're an expert in helping kids get into college. What's your advice now that SATs have been canceled through a certain point, AP tests? What's going on with all that?
Oh, yeah. So the AP tests have been moved online, and in a lot of cases, they've been shortened from 3.5 hours to like 45 minutes. So they're open book, they're online, and the first ones were yesterday. They're going to continue through this week. There have been at least a few instances where they've crashed. Computers have like completely, or connections have been lost. So it's been a little bit of a struggle. The good news is that there are makeup dates, and that most colleges have said that they'll commit to honoring AP credits. So for example, if you get like a 3, 4, or 5 on an AP test, depending on where you go, you might get credit for like an introductory class, like a 101 type of class, which can be really useful. But some colleges have explicitly said they won't honor them because they're shortened. So what I would do is really look into, if you're interested, really look into like what colleges you're interested in, what policies they put out, and what they've said about the AP tests to get kind of that full picture.
We got to say hi to Nina. We're bringing in an actual student right now, so who knows better than the student going through it. Nina, what have you been dealing with trying to figure out schooling in this new normal?
I kind of like the remote learning, but I rather like be in class and have easy access to teachers, like emailing them. They might not respond like right away, so you have to wait. And I guess I like doing work on paper because I don't know. I just don't like looking at a screen for a long time because it just like hurts my eyes, and I don't know. I don't know.
You actually developed some pain, right?
Yeah, in my neck.
Wow.
So.
Oh, wow. Should we be getting our kids blue light glasses? That's a good question too.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that you could ask your teacher is that if you get really tired of looking at a screen, you could, as long as your handwriting isn't like chicken scratch like mine is, you could write out your answers or at least some of your answers and then maybe photograph them and send them to your teacher. And that way you're not like staring at the screen all the time and sort of getting that fatigue.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Actually, my cell phone, I put on a tiny scanner on here, and it
nice.
on the assignment, because we were running into the same thing. My son is going through Zoom fatigue. I think it's hard socially for kids too. So much of our interaction is kind of with the nonverbal cues, that you might get from a teacher. And, if a teacher might be, taking a class task a little bit for not getting the assignments done, I think sometimes the tone comes across differently, right? Than if you're in a classroom. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I'm worried about socialization. I mean, quite frankly, that's a big part of schooling is having those relationships with our fellow students. And so I am worried about that. Is there anything we can do, Kevin, to try and mimic that beyond having these Zoom classroom experiences?
Yeah. One thing that you can do is kind of have like Zoom play dates and things like that. So you can use Zoom for your own purposes as well as class. So maybe if you want to hang out with friends or use FaceTime or whatever tools you want to use, maybe setting up like times where students can kind of meet with their close friends, talk about things, not just talk about school. And that way they're getting at least some of that socialization in.
Yeah, I did a story about how Girl Scouts of America is actually doing that for either you don't even have to be a Girl Scout to join in on it, and they are doing Zoom, like activities together. So maybe it's not academic, but it's a different way to kind of make new friends, and they're setting up pen pals. So that's one thing. I got to research if the Cub Scouts are doing anything, so I can maybe get Jack involved in something like that. That might be fun.
Yeah, and a lot of summer programs are also going to be online, so you'll still be meeting new people through those though. So that's kind of an interesting way of like branching out without like meeting new people without actually meeting them.
Yeah.
What have you heard, Kevin, about in your education about how schools will be, I don't know, how we'll kind of ease into things come September? I've heard a variety of different things, staggering kids on certain days, maybe not going back till January, worst case scenario. Like, what are you hearing from, your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's no official word is the first thing I'll say. There isn't a plan in place. I know that there are a lot of ideas like that, the staggering being floated around. And my sense is that schools are going to be cautious, and especially the state government's going to be cautious as well, which safety comes first, right? It makes a lot of sense. I guess if I were to speculate, I think that schools will be open. Like they might have, I think that staggered approach might be good, or maybe having the opportunity for one-on-one meetings might be something that is attractive, but I think it'll be maybe a while before we have the traditional kind of 30 kids in a classroom type thing, especially for younger kids who you have 5-year-olds, right? They don't keep personals like 6 feet apart. So I think we'll see, but that would be my prediction.
Nina, I just want to jump in for Nina. Now that she's finishing her 8th grade year, and I'm asking her this, and I don't know this question. Do you have like questions about? I mean, you're going into your school year. Do you feel like you're prepared now? I mean, and to go in, or do you have any questions about that? How to prepare for 9th grade, high school?
I feel prepared. I mean, I don't know. Probably, I feel like the work they're giving us is kind of easy. I don't know if it's like up to the standards of like high school work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not really sure how it's gonna be. I mean, I feel like I'm prepared socially, but I don't know academically.
And do you feel like you would have? I guess my fear is that there was a rush to put this whole thing together, Kevin. I mean, nobody could have prepared for this, and so it's sort of like either they push you ahead to subjects like you were saying, Christa, that the kids have not seen before, or they're sort of just like giving them filler work until just fill out the end of the school year, and it's up to us to sort of know our child and say, okay, well, let me guess at how I'm going to get this child ready for her next grade. And I haven't been to school in 9 million years. Like, what do I do? Like, start reading what she needs to take? Do I call the teacher and say, well, what is ninth grade going to be like? Like, what do I do here?
Yeah. So what I would do is maybe look online on your school's website and look at what a traditional ninth grade schedule looks like, or an advanced schedule, and then say, for example, if you're going to take, I don't know, geometry, like what skills do you need to as prerequisites for geometry?
Right.
So then what I would do is kind of at least make sure that you have that foundation going into the class, so that you're not feeling lost or behind, and you can kind of learn on Khan Academy, on YouTube, all these sites. You could even start learning geometry on those and have kind of low stakes situations where you're maybe watching lessons, so that when you actually get into the classroom or the virtual classroom, it feels a little bit more like review, which is you can kind of use that time to get ahead. But what I would do is try to create a sense of certainty by kind of picking a bunch of initial classes in your head, or at least looking at what those will probably be, and then kind of preparing for those.
So what I'm hearing basically is that we need to start thinking whether summer school happens or not, whether fall happens. Bye, Nina. Whether fall happens or not, almost assume it's not, and prepare throughout the summer so we can set our children up for whatever comes our way come fall.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of thinking about it. I mean, we know how to do in-person classes. So if it is in person, then it'll feel much more normal, and kind of we'll be used to that. So what I would do is kind of prepare for the worst, so to speak, and kind of expect that it's going to be online, probably through the fall, and then check for updates. Hopefully it's not, but just be prepared for the kind of the most challenging outcome.
And if parents want to get tutors, is there a way to do that? You think YouTube could maybe service that a little bit, or do you think that maybe are there resources you recommend?
Yeah, there are so many different ones. We do tutoring. There's Prep Scholar. There are so many other really great tutors there's Varsity Tutors. They really do all ages of testing and kind of tutoring. So they work with high schoolers, college students, but even younger kids as well, especially for elementary and middle school. So it's really nice because this is there are so many people available now and looking to help. So you could probably get an affordable tutor who's been a lot of these services are based online too. So they're kind of used to teaching online and probably more experienced at it than your kind of traditional classroom teachers.
And you also mentioned that 4th, 7th, and 10th grade are the most critical years of education. Explain why, and if you have a child in one of those years, what do you need to know?
Yeah, so those are definitely the most critical because there are so many skills kind of built in those years just based on the research. A lot of reading skills, especially in 7th and 10th grade, and then some of the quantitative skills also. I mean, the reading skills kind of across the board, but the quantitative skills, especially in 4th and 7th grade. So that's kind of something that you really want to pay attention to. So if you're a parent, I think just being really cognizant of that. If your student's in 2nd grade, honestly, they'll have a lot of time to catch up on stuff down the road because they're so young. But if your student's in 10th grade, and especially as they get older, you want to really show them that this is a time to take responsibility for their own learning. And especially maybe one silver lining to this is that this is kind of they'll have to be a lot more independent when they actually reach college. So kind of building that responsibility, kind of taking charge of that education for themselves at this point is a really good thing to start teaching.
Absolutely. It's a test run for college, as we can tell them.
Yeah, it's a test run for college.
Without any of the fun.
It's just not as fun, right?
I'm your frat brother. That's what I tell my kids. This is all kids is getting. Oh, that's funny. I know I'm trying to figure out potty training for the 2-year-old while figuring out all the things while helping my son learn how to write and start his reading foundation right now. So it's not easy. And if parents are stressed, I mean, Latoyia, Christa, I just want to make sure that we're putting out there that we're feeling that too, and you're not alone.
Right. When I want to encourage people, because I see people who are watching, I started a watch party on my Facebook page. I know other people, I see them engage. If you have a question for Kevin, he's your guy. He's right here right now. We can actually see your comments. So if you want to check in and ask anything, if you're going through a frustration, if you feel like you're not prepared, if you just want some encouragement, we are here for you. This is our Mom's Chat. We're going to have it all week long, different topics. But Kevin March is kind enough to take the time to check in with us and be here right now and be a resource. So please add that in. I just want to make sure that you know that we're not the experts. Please, this is your time to check in and get your questions answered. I don't know, Christa, do you want to say anything as well?
No, I am just, let me just tell you that, the big thing in my mind was transitions, and when I'm so glad that you brought Nina to sit with us and talk.
Yeah.
That's a huge step, and to have that physical space that you're not able to kind of go in, like, her high school, right? Not being at transition day, my son not being able to do his middle school transition day. I mean, all of this stuff that kind of makes you feel a little bit more at ease, making that transition, it's not there for them. So anything we can do to help them out, and again, Kevin, thank you so much, because this is how I spend my days, worrying about my kids. Like,
absolutely, yeah.
But Latoyia, I cannot wait to hear what you have coming up too. Are you doing yours tomorrow? Are you moderating tomorrow?
No, I'm on Thursday, and I'll be doing.
Okay.
So a heads up for folks, if you're interested, mine, Kevin, you can still pop in. Mine is going to be about making. It's about creating space for moms, and it's about when we're all home, we're all trying to remotely teach our kids, work from home, many of us, and there's a mental break that you need as a mom, and there is a physical space that you need, and how to carve out your own little spot. And
it's not Mother's Day. Is that possible?
I don't know. Before we go, I guess I'm bringing in the live guest here today, so we'll bring one more in for me.
Hi.
Say hi.
So adorable.
So what's your name?
Eli.
And how old are you?
3.
And so what are you doing right now? Are you learning at all, or what are you doing?
But I have a surprise.
You have a surprise what?
Oh.
A surprise egg. Okay. That's what he's doing right now. Eli, what's your favorite shape?
Circle.
Circles. Do you like shapes?
Mm-hmm.
I told you, Kevin, that he's obsessed with geometry, and so we had to learn all of our shapes to keep up with him. Christa, Jackie, you know my.
I mean, I can't get enough of Eli.
How many shapes sides does a dodecahedron have?
12.
12.
Wow.
Wow.
I didn't even know the answer to that.
See, he's ready for the SAT.
Mommy doesn't know.
Well, thank you all so much. I'm getting the wrap signal. But again, we'll be back tomorrow at 10, and we're going to have a whole new round of, what's our topic tomorrow, Christa?
So it's anxiety.
Oh.
No, I'm sorry. No, what are we doing tomorrow? I thought we were doing anxiety.
I think it is tomorrow.
I think it is anxiety. I think that's tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Well, my guest is coming on Thursday, so I'll make sure.
Well, we'll figure this all out before tomorrow at 10.
Good.
And also on Friday, wherever we have abundance of questions and we feel like we need to jump back in, that'll be our extra free-for-all on that. So we're going to find out more. We're in this together again. So join us back again at 10 o'clock every day this week on Facebook Live. Kevin, thank you so much for your expert advice. I think we're all a little better at homeschooling now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all. Join us again tomorrow at 10.
Bye.
Good job. Bye-bye. Thank you, Kevin.
Kisses.
Mwah.